Welcome to another Lawn Fawn video. I'm Kara and today it's the bluebird of happiness flying over to say I'm here for you. So we're using the large slimline with sliders and the slimline grassy hillsides, the cloudy slimline stencils, picket fence border, and also the cattails border. I did some partial die cutting to get that long. The bubble border, but I'm using it for a treetop with Cilantro cardstock. I'll be using the Swish and Pop pull tab, and all of these pieces will be used, but I already cut out the tab, the long pull mechanism, and then the part that rotates, and that is in acetate. Also using the flowers from Build-A-Basket Easter. I'm going to focus on tulips on this card. So I cut the stems out in Noble Fir and the tulips in Ballet Slippers, Sunflower, Fake Tan, Guava, Raspberry, and Chili Pepper. Using the Center Picture Window Card Heart add-on for the birds in Fog, Paper Bag, Blue Jay, and Moonstone. The Leafy Tree Backdrop Landscape, I already had it ink blended, but that's woodgrain cardstock in the light brown. And I'm going to use the clouds from the Pivot Pop-Up, and the Happy Wavy Sayings is the only stamp set I'll be using. I'm going to start by ink blending kiddie pool ink with the life-changing blender brush onto my background. Now this is the largest stitched rectangle of the large slimline with sliders. The cloudy slimline stencils work great for this. They cover across the entire card, but also they're a little bit longer, so I can angle them a little bit, tilt them a bit if I want to get those clouds looking different. And they also have the grid marks on them, so I can make sure I know where things are. Time now for the Swish and Pop pull tab. That little guide shows me how far up I need to be on my card. I can go higher, but I have to go at least that high. Die cut out those holes. I could even extend those holes to the left if I want, but I want to see first how far I want my swish to swish. So I'm putting a brad on the two pieces, and now I'm deciding where should I have that brad go into the back of the card. Well, I need to see my scene a little bit in the back first because I want the bird to fly up to the branches in the tree. So I kind of need to have the branches ready so I can see where he's going to go. I used the leafy tree backdrop and just cut it out in a way that I thought it would look like branches in the tree, kind of coming off the side of my card. Well, once I have this ready, I have enough of the background to decide where that object needs to go. And in my case, it's a bird. So where that bird needs to land, I'm using a mini glue dot on the base of the bird where I kind of think it's going to be on that acetate. And then I can take my second brad and put it through the acetate, through that little hole and through my panel. And I know I will at least need the last hole there in order to have him swing the way I want. And I am positioning him the way I think he's going to look when he gets up into that tree. But as you can see, if I did that, he'd probably land on his head. So I want to put that acetate right where I think he should be when he lands, and that's pretty much what I had hoped for, and position him the way he would be. So you can see he kind of looks like he's sleeping. He's lying down on the job there in the background, but you won't see him that way. You only see him flying and then sitting up onto the branch. I want to cut my grassy hillside tall enough to hide the mechanism, but not too high. So that hides it just fine. And now I can decide where to put the tab opening. There are two little marks that I just had to line up with the pull tab, and then I could die cut that piece out. Fits right on there. All right, now I'm gonna give that grassy hillside a little bit of dimension, and this is cilantro ink on the cilantro cardstock. And I have this cattail border, but I just really want it for the grass. So I'm cutting those cattails down, kind of either making them into grass blades or just cutting them off altogether. And then I will ink blend this with the cilantro ink as well. And I also ink blended the tree, but decided I want those leaves to be a different color than the grass. So this is jalapeno ink, and it worked great. It works so nice with the cilantro cardstock. I'm just ink blending the canopy of leaves and then the little bundles of leaves that I have there. Add some adhesive to the back, and then I'll set this right onto the panel. Put some glue on the branches and add that as well. I had that leafy tree backdrop all ink blended and cut out for a different project, but when I went another way, I had it left over. And that's one I would hold on to because that woodgrain cardstock, I knew I would use it again. All right, so now I'm going to put these little bushels of the leaves onto the branches. Just kind of decide where I want them to go. Some will be on foam adhesive, and then others will be adhered right to the back. Now I am building up the back of this card a bit, and one thing I know is when that little bird comes around, I don't want him to get stuck on that back. So I have a workaround for that. Well, we'll get there. I'm getting ahead of myself. Just clipping off the top of those clouds that turned into leaves. And I realized the bottom of that tree canopy was kind of in the way of my pull tab. And so it was behind the grass, and I knew I could just cut it right off. All right, before I get too far on the rest of the card, I want to make sure I get my sentiment on there. So I put the panel in the misti and used some forget-me-not ink from Lawnfawn. It says, "I'm here for you," and it's from Happy Wavy Sayings. Well, now I'm deciding how high up I want to put the picket fence and where I want to place the gate. So I'm kind of having everything over to the right on the card. And I want the clumps of grass not to cover the gate. Decide where I want that fence, and now I'm going to give it a little bit of shading with Copic markers. So this is a C2, and I'm doing it on the left and bottom of the different lines. Just getting those all shaded through, and decided once I had it on that cilantro, it was pretty light. So I decided to go back in with a C4 and put in my lines. And then once I had those all on there, I came back with a C0. So it shaded the C4, C2, and with the C0, kind of blended it all out. Used the glue tube and put some glue on the back of my fence and glued it onto the grassy hillside border. Clipped off the extra that was hanging on over, and then with the part that has the little pull tab opening, I just clipped the pieces out of there and then glued back on the little piece of the fence that was underneath it. I want a nice stitched edge to match the panel, and so I'm going to take that same rectangle, figure out where I want that grass cut, and take that over to my die cut machine, cut that out, and there it is. And now it has that nice border of stitching, and you can see the gate through the clumps of grass. Looks like someone needs to weed or mow or trim. Anyway, put some glue on the back, just on the base of the cattail border, because I want to be able to tuck in different pieces. the stems for the tulips and the little clumps of grass. Once I had all the tulip stems where I think I wanted them, then I started putting in the colors, and I wanted a variety in this garden. So they're all different heights and different colors. Some are tucked in the grass, but some are coming up from below the card, so they're in front of the grass. Now for the tulips, I wanted to keep the shading simple, but I did want to shade because I shaded the gate and ink blended the grassy backgrounds. So I'm using an RV21 on the Ballet Slippers, R24 on the chili pepper. On that fake tan, I used a YR02, RV14 on the Guava Cardstock, and RV55 on the raspberry, and Y15 on the sunflower cardstock. I glued everything down with the lawnfawn glue tube, and then made sure that they were all glued down by shaking it. Usually I'm missing something, but I didn't, and so I turned it over and I'm trimming off the excess stems on the bottom. So now the background is all done and the foreground is all done. Time to work on that swish and pop mechanism. So as I said, I wanted to raise it a little bit so that that bird wasn't getting caught on the tree. And so I have some foam. Now I have two thicknesses of foam, and this is the thinner one. I think it's 1/8 of an inch or maybe a 16th. It's thin, and I just cut a square of that, and I'm going to put the brad through that, and that will raise it on the back of my panel a little bit. Just trim it to match, and you won't see it because it's just going to sit right with the mechanism. Put that back in, push down those prongs, and then you can see that he's not hitting the leaves at all. I want my grassy panel to be raised even higher, so I'm using my thicker foam. Now, both of these I just got from a local craft store. They come in thick and thin, and I am just cutting out a piece that will fit. I don't want the bird to hit, and I'm keeping that piece of acetate tall on him for now, just in case I wanted to move him around at all. I didn't want to cut that off yet, but I'm putting double-sided tape on my foam, and you could also just use, you could double up foam adhesive for this as well. You don't have to use thick craft foam for it. But since I have a slider card, I have quite a lot of room to build up the base. And so I'm adding just some thin strips now under where the bird will be and under the pull tab. I want to make sure that that pull tab is going to work fine. So I'm going to trim that down a little bit, and then I'll put double-sided adhesive on both of those as well. I'll make sure he's not getting caught on anything, and then next I can trim off that pull tab. So I want to put that pull in the shortest position where he's up on the tree. So at the start, and then flip it over and clip that off. And I realized I could also build up that pull tab just so that it has a little height to match the height that I have it inside. So I'm taking that thin foam and just making a strip and putting on some double-sided tape, just taping it to the pull tab itself. I could have just taped it to the card itself, but only one so that it moves. So I'm adding my little thin piece of foam behind, and I decided I could even add more support to the back. So with the thick piece of foam, I'm adding the little double-sided tape, and then I'll put that just above the pull tab and make sure that it won't touch at all, and you can get your fingers in there, but that'll support my front panel. I took the release paper off of the double-sided tape and taped that down, clip in the grass just a little bit. Now I had a white tab in the beginning, And I decided instead of white, I wanted to make this little pull tab handle out of noble fir. That way it kind of blends in with the grass, but it still shows up and doesn't get lost. So I'm gluing that onto the pull tab, and it's time to make the bluebird. These birds come from the Center Picture Window Card Heart add-on, and I'm putting a little storm cloud cardstock behind the bird's eye so that that shows through. And then I looked at bluebirds online to see where to make the different cuts. And so just above the beak, but below the eye for the blue part, kind of looks like a mask, like Zorro with the bluebird. And then with the brown part, just making sure that I trim off enough so that he has white on his belly. There's the paper bag cardstock with the fog cardstock underneath. And then there's the blue jay cardstock up top. He'll also have blue tail feathers and a blue wing. So I'm just clipping off the tail feather part, and then I will add the wing as well. I glued it all together, and then I ripped it all apart. I decided that blue was just a little too dark, and since I shaded all my other die cut pieces on this card, I was going to shade this one as well. So I decided to use Moonstone cardstock instead. Just clipped it out the same way and glued it down. So there's his little tail feathers and his wing. Now his wing is down because he's going to just be sitting in the tree. So I have him all set, and the other one is going to be flying towards the tree, and so his wing is going to be up a bit. Well, I'm using a B12 to shade the blue portions of my bird, and then he will also have an E47 for the beak. And this bluebird is ready to sit in the tree, and he's glued in there, and then a fresh glue dot on my acetate. Then I want to make sure it's positioned in its closed spot, and then put that bird the way I want him. And now I can cut that extra acetate off because I know he's in the right place. And let's see how he works. Perfect. There he goes. He's flying to the tree to check up on his friend and say, "I'm here for you." All we need to do now is put a little adhesive on the 3.5 by 8.5 note card and set the panel on top. And this card is all done. I hope you enjoyed the video today and it inspired you to maybe use the Swish and Pop pull tab to make your own happy garden scene. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye!